wait till it's too late. Don't wait till it's too late.
Don't wait until it's too late.
This is 350.org is a brainchild of Bill McKibben, who wrote a book about 20 years ago called The End of Nature, and he's been trying to wake us up, our leaders, about this little problem that we have. Our sign over here says it all. The state of the planet, where we are now, is 387 parts per million. That's carbon dioxide. That's a global warming gas, and it's heating up our planet. You could say our planet has a fever, and we need to bring it down. All the scientists say, James Hansen, NASA climate scientist says, we've got to bring it down to 350. And there's a lot we can do individually, but we're going to have to move our political leaders. They're behind the curve. They're taking baby steps. We have to, the people have to put pressure on them to get the right targets. Otherwise, we're looking at a very bleak future, I'm afraid. To give you a little perspective, before we started using coal at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, we were at about 290 parts per million. So you can see we're really exceeding the safe limit of where we have to be with the CO2, with the gases, the coal that we're burning. We have to get back to renewables and a sustainable economy. This is happening in over 5,000 communities over the world, in every continent, and even in the Maldives. They're one of the countries that are shooting for zero carbon. That's what we need to do by 2020. I believe we have to cut out fossil fuels completely. We can do it. Yes, we have to keep the heat on. Let Obama know 350 is the target we want. I'm going to bring on our first speaker of the day, Matson, founder of Main Street Moms. Main Street Moms has been a force in the community with their soup and solutions, educating people on plastics, and they always have a lot of different campaigns going there with their small bite-sized actions. So you don't feel overwhelmed, you take little actions, and they have a table down there where you can send a letter to Obama. And so, Megan, what's 350 mean to you?
Thank you, Bing. And really, thanks to all the individuals and organizations that really work to put this Day of Action together here in Point Reyes and West Marin. It's exciting to me. I just heard that today's 350 Day of Action is the largest International Day of Action in history. So we are shoulder to shoulder and side by side with people in 181 countries around the world. You can see some beautiful photographs of the actions internationally on the website at 350.org. One of the ones I love is it's the largest underwater protest ever staged in the Maldives, and they're all underwater with the signs because they're actually going under in that first wave of island nations. So they are, riding those twin rails of really fighting for a truthful approach to the challenge by raising the profile of 350 as the goal, not 450 as is being fought for by the EU and signed onto by Obama. So I really appreciate the heart of the people in the Maldives staging this giant action for 350. At the same time, their president is planning a fund, a national fund, to build up the monies necessary to actually buy land for everyone there to move to. So we are in this sort of a knife's edge where we're going forward and doing what really needs to happen. As Bing mentioned, forcing our leaders to deal on a truthful basis with this challenge. 350 is the number we have to hit, and but at the same time preparing for the changes that are happening already. It's an exciting day to take part in. I want to just personally, 350, beyond meaning really a number that represents a truthful approach to this challenge, it's also a call for me back to action. I've taken a break with my family and other things, and I dove into a lot of the information around this more recently and realized that action is, as we've said again and again and again, the very best antidote. And I went in a little unprotected because I hadn't, and so it's been a pleasure today to join in, just as an example, Gail Graham with the Main Street Moms, if you haven't already, put together these beautiful 6 postcard actions pitching the 350 number to our president, who's on the 450 delusion train right now, but also to Senator Dianne Feinstein, Jared Huffman, etc. So if you haven't had a chance already, go over and sign those 6 actions. The postage is right on there, and they'll go out. And I'm going to, take my own advice of previous years and start sending these regularly. So we get the 350 number, and we say, pay attention to what we actually have to do right now, so that we're taking the necessary actions, not the palliatives. So you are going to hear from some wonderful speakers today. Paul Fenn is here to speak to Marin Clean Energy. He is the originator of the genius of community choice aggregation. Marin County is actually looking at a very promising energy contract that would give us all the opportunity to double our green energy use over PG&Es. I'll let Paul cover the details there, but it's a really exciting prospect, and it's in front of all of our city councils and our county now.
Speaking of power and what we need to do at the state level, next speaker is the man who brought the CCA law to the state of California that allows Marin Clean Energy to offer an alternative to PG&E, who have a monopoly right now. But in this county, we are the forefront of allowing us to have a choice. And he is working with the city of San Francisco. He and his partner, Julia Peters, live in Marshall, and we're fortunate to have them here in Marin, helping this county move forward to get on renewables like we've never seen before. Without further ado, Paul Fenn.
The issue of localization, there are a lot of challenges to it. And the big one is going to be NIMBYism in this county. We've got a big opportunity. I mean, it's not just big, it's really historic. A 100-year opportunity for Marin to physically transform its energy supply. In the next, really the political decision is going to happen in the next 6 months. It's halfway through being made by the Marin Energy Authority, formed by the county and all the cities in the county. They have chosen their wholesale supplier, and now in November they're going to hold hearings on localization. That is, what should they do? What does localization mean? It means windmills that you see. It doesn't mean a wind farm, hopefully necessarily in my view, but windmills in different places. Very difficult to permit windmills, and so I'm really glad to hear from Supervisor Kinsey that there's action on that to try to get the county ready for some change. Change is hard. If you think back, I like to remind people that before petroleum, we think of petroleum as a dirty resource. Well, we used to light our homes with whale oil, and if you compare the ecology of lighting your home with a whale's fat, petroleum looks pretty good. And right before that, we cut down all the forests in Europe. And so we deforested Europe, then we went to the whales, then we went to petroleum. Now we're on natural gas and nuclear power. Not so bad if you put it in perspective. So now the transition to renewables and to demand technology, often neglected, so-called smart grid technology, is in some ways a more profound transition because it involves essentially the elimination of a business. Something I like to remind people is the idea that you could stop climate change or get to 350 without harming the energy industry is a bit like saying you're going to stop smoking without harming the tobacco industry. It's rather silly because cancer is caused by the actual burning of tobacco. Climate change is caused by the burning of fuel. If you stop burning the fuel, then you're not selling the fuel. If you're not selling the fuel, you're out of business. So there is a major economic factor at play within climate change, which is often, I think, profoundly neglected, which is the coal industry, the gas industry, the petroleum industry, the electric industry are stopping action on climate change. Now, how in California are they stopping? You just heard about the community choice movement Megan was talking about at the beginning in Marin. Marin's now essentially the leader. Marin, San Francisco, and California are the leaders. I'm happy to say that San Francisco just completed its request for proposals. We just finished it last week. It's going out next week. The Board of Supervisors will approve it for issuance. So Marin and San Francisco are both headed toward an effort by the supervisors, by the city councilors of this county to substantially change the energy supply toward localization, toward renewables. Not just a marginal thing with a few solar panels, but the discussion is 51% renewable. Okay, that's the target set by Marin Energy Authority. It's hard to understand just how big a change that is for the industry. There never has been a transition that dramatic within any region in the world, setting that kind of standard for change. PG&E has recently announced that it has funded a referendum, a constitutional amendment, which will be on the ballot next June. They've put up $3 million, and they have paid signature gatherers in the last 2 months to collect 1 million signatures, which they've just completed. They will be on the ballot. It's called the Taxpayers' Right to Vote Act. They will play it as a kind of faux populism of taxpayers who want to stop their governments from wasteful efforts to change the energy supply. And they'll say that the voters have a right to approve these initiatives, that local city councils shouldn't have the authority on a straight majority vote to decide what to do with energy. If it interferes with their business, they should go for 2/3 approval. You all, if you read the paper, you must be aware of what the 2/3 approval requirement has done to the state of California. It has effectively bankrupted and destroyed its ability to govern. Okay? That's what we're looking at in June. Much in the same way that the oil industry has protected its interests against in the climate debate. The coal industry has published misinformation. They've created academic seats at major universities for professors to deny climate change and industrial causes of climate change for decades. PG&E now is moving very aggressively to stop this, and you should all know that and be aware when you see it on the street. That's what it is. They won't come out and say this is PG&E stopping your local green campaign. They'll come out and say these are taxpayers protecting their right to vote. It's very Orwellian, and please try to get the word out, because they're saying they're going to spend between $30 and $100 million to pass this constitutional amendment next June. That's more than I think the last big U.S. Senate fight, Dianne Feinstein, was $30 million. So PG&E is going to triple that budget to stop Marin and San Francisco and other communities from going green. A little negative note. It's big news, actually, and I hope you will get the word out. It probably uses up my time, so thanks very much.
Our next speaker, I'm proud to introduce, is Jerry Mander. Lives in Bolinas. He's the founder of the International Forum on Globalization. Back in the 90s, the International Forum on Globalization started some teach-ins to raise awareness on what was the WTO, what the corporations were attempting to do. And when Seattle came, they were very instrumental in shutting down the WTO. And through the years, it's a think tank that has tremendous impact. They gave put on another teach-in a couple years ago called the Triple Global Crisis, on climate change, peak oil, and species extinction. And Jerry's just been a force in raising awareness around the world, and he'll give us a global perspective on climate change.
The major industrial nations of the world are refusing to commit to major cuts in emissions until the United States Congress does it first. Since the U.S. is the world's largest emitter, they will not cut growth until we do it first. But neither the U.S. Congress or the President is committing to anything meaningful so far. Meanwhile, the United States and other industrial nations are demanding that third world countries make a clear commitment to emissions reductions before we do. We are trying to put the onus on new industrial nations like China and India to be first out of the box. But they point out that the U.S. has accounted historically for 40% of historical emissions, which should be viewed as a debt, they say, that we owe the rest of the world, and that the industrial world together has accounted for something like 70%. I might be wrong on that exact number. We need to cut first and more, they say. We refuse. No movement, no deal. Meanwhile, we've gotten most of our raw materials for this overproduction over the last century by basically stealing them from third world colonized countries. So how dare we now demand that poor countries announce their emissions cuts before we do, and that they should carry a heavy burden on this score? One of our colleagues is Martin Core from the Third World Network. I know some of you know that. He points out that in a world of diminishing resources where total supply is diminishing rapidly, that poor countries, which have always been promised that they were going to be developed and that eventually we would have equity, it's going to be ever more difficult for poor countries to get a piece of the ever diminishing pie. And that's part of why they're fighting so hard on this point of who goes first. But really it's all about who gets to continue to try to grow their industry versus who declines. Okay, finally, here's the good news. Sort of. One way or the other, we're going to get to 350 ppm because the resources of the planet, especially energy and water, are not sufficient to sustain industrial production at the present level. Governments are now fighting each other for the last crumbs of the industrial resources, but they're running out. I fear that we have to go through a period of terrible geopolitical trauma. I'm still standing. Through a period of terrible geopolitical trauma, wars and competitions for the crumbs, but that the present level of industrial society, present level of industrial output is going to decline over the next several decades. In fact, I'm ready to promise you that. In fact, if you don't believe me, the New York Times yesterday had a very, very, very good story bringing together all of the conferences that are now going on among scientists, basically making that same point. And if you don't believe that, we have just published this terrific report, which actually Richard Heinberg's the author of, and I wrote the foreword and edited, called Searching for a Miracle. It's basically about analyzing all the alternative energy systems that are being proposed as substitutions for diminishing carbon. And from the point of view of net energy, that is to say, how much energy it costs versus how much energy you get for each of those 18 energy sources. And the net result is that some are better than others. Some actually are net energy losers, like, for example, biofuels and a few others. Probably the best alternative is wind, but no combination of alternative energy sources is going to come anywhere near being able to sustain industrial society at its present level. It's a pretty shocking result that basically is saying that we're searching for a miracle. If you want, you can. This is not yet up on our website, but it will be. But you can buy them. They're here. The Point Reyes Books has a few of them over there. But they cost $15. But you can download it free if you want from the IFT website in maybe a week. So the central question becomes this: will governments face these facts, join in agreements while there's still time to make sensible transitions on a global level, to where the necessity to produce less, use less resources, achieve greater equity among what is left, or will be war? One way or the other, as a planet, we will be powering down. And by next century, we'll be below 350 ppm. Of course, we don't want to wait for that. Meanwhile, in communities like this, the process is ever more clear. We need to assess our resources, build a sustainable economy, which as much as possible remains free of global geopolitics, and achieves local food sovereignty, community control of corporate activity, democratic local governance, and equity among the peoples who live here. We're already well on the way to that, thanks to you all. And also, let's try to engage and influence our national and global leaders that they should see the handwriting on the wall and get with it now instead of later. It won't be easy for anyone, but we'll eventually get there. Thanks very much, and thanks for your attention.